Welcome back to Not Another Nucks Podcast with your hosts Ajay and Harp, Season 2, Episode 1, brought to you by our sponsor, Loudmouth Brewing, where you can get the best burgers and beer in town. It's been a long off season, Ajay. How have you been, man?
I've been good. Yeah, it's been a few months since we've last caught up. Can't remember the last episode we recorded when it was, but yeah, not up to a whole lot. Obviously with COVID and all that, just kind of been taking out food, coming home, just kind of chilling at home. What about you?
Same, just hanging out with family, hanging out with the fiance. Sister's got a new kid, so just hanging out with that little one, seeing how things are going. But can't really go anywhere, can't really meet anyone. So it is what it is. But a lot has happened over the offseason with the Canucks, much more than many people actually anticipated. First of all, we don't even know when the season was going to start. Looking forward now, apparently the second week of January will be the start date, 13th to the 15th. We got our own Canadian division. That's the wildest thing ever.
I'm so excited for that, man. I'm so excited for that.
But here's the thing. I am really excited too. We barely ever see our Toronto rivals. And those games are always insane, especially in the building. But the thing is this: first of all, are we even gonna have fans in the building? Second, I am gonna miss seeing people like Crosby and Ovechkin for 50 games straight, or however long the season is gonna be. That's gonna be pretty difficult.
Yeah, true. So your first question: will there be fans? Not to start with. I think a few teams have explored the possibility of playing games outdoors, but I don't think that was really realistic. So I don't think there's gonna be fans. I think the feel of the game is gonna be pretty similar to what we saw in Edmonton and Toronto. And just to your second question, I mean, I do agree. It will suck not being able to see Crosby and all those guys, but the fact that we all know that this is basically a one and done type of situation, and it's pretty unique to basically be facing off against a Canadian opponent every game. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun to watch, and I think the loss of not seeing Crosby and Ovechkin, I think we won't really miss it as much.
That's true, and we still got McDavid, and we have Matthews, and can't forget Pettersson, right? So there is still a lot of great talent that we will be being able to be showcased for us fans. But moving forward, just looking at the schedule itself, I've actually been quite intrigued in how that would play out. Our back-to-backs, would it be, I know the East is much more easier going from one city to the next, but back-to-backs here would, say we're in Winnipeg, would we just do 2 back-to-backs in Winnipeg and then go on to the next team, or how do you think that would play out?
So that's what I'm hearing. So in terms of the entire schedule, I've heard that it's gonna be about a 50 to 60 game schedule. I think the owners, because based off of the new CBA, the players are not losing out on any more salary. So I think the owners want to play as many games, and I think some owners they've even proposed an 82 game schedule. I don't think that's realistic. But with a 50 to 60 game schedule, I think what you'll see is kind of like what you just said, where if Vancouver was in Winnipeg, instead of just playing one game and then going to Toronto, I think they'll play 2 or maybe 3 games. So kind of similar to a baseball schedule, where you have 3 or 4 games together as opposed to just one and done, which will be pretty exciting to watch. It's kind of like a mini playoff series almost.
That's exactly it, right? You get best out of 3 or best out of, whatever, right? So that is pretty cool. One thing though, I'm thinking, as excited as I am for the Canadian division, I think that's really unique. I think that gets the market, especially in Canada, very amped up. It kind of goes back down to the original 6 series, when there was barely any teams in the league. Everything was just starting off. The fan bases just in those markets were going rapidly, even though there were only a few teams. I feel like hockey in Canada has been not dipping. It is obviously is the peak sport here, but other sports have been catching up, like baseball, right? Basketball. Baseball has too.
Baseball? Who the hell is watching baseball?
Sorry, basketball, and then soccer has actually been doing pretty well, especially in the East, and
football as well.
Football, especially football. Or NFL, right? But
exactly, not the CFL.
I mean, I wish the CFL did better, right? But it is what it is.
Of course.
3 downs isn't enough. I'm sorry. But anyways, I think this is an opportunity to grow hockey even more in our market and just celebrate the whole Canadian aspect of the game. But historically speaking, looking at the Canucks and how they have fared against teams like Winnipeg and Toronto and like Montreal, especially in the past few years, right? Or in the recent history, I don't know if we would do so well against these teams. I know I'm looking in the past rather than looking forward. I think our team, we'll talk about the changes in a little bit, but just looking at the past, our record against Canadian teams isn't that great.
Yeah, I mean, it is true. They have had our number, especially when anytime we've done those East Coast trips. I think it was probably around the 2011 team where, we, I think, swept them. But since then, I think they've had our number, like you said. But looking into this year and this team, and with the current division and all the teams and the players that they have, I know a lot of the analysts have predicted Vancouver to finish near the bottom of the division.
Yeah.
I think it's honestly anyone's division. I don't think there's a clear-cut number one. I know a lot of people are giving that mantle to Toronto, but I don't think they're as good as people think they are. And Calgary, while they have upgraded with Markstrom, obviously, and Tanev and all that, I think there are still a lot of question marks. Even with Markstrom, I think Markstrom, while he had a great year or 2 years, and his play has been improving a lot, I do wonder how much the loss of Ian Clark will affect him.
Yeah.
I think people tend to overlook that. Ian Clark spent a lot of time with Markstrom, and not usually, but most of the time, I don't want to characterize it that way, but like a lot of the times when a goalie, like a star goalie, leaves his goalie coach, like for example, Bobrovsky, when he left Columbus. I think I just butchered his name, but when he left Columbus to Florida, his play just went downhill, right? And like Columbus is known to have a great goalie coach. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that, like, a lot of teams have question marks. I think Canucks, we will get into their roster makeup soon, but while we have lost some key players, I do think there's enough talent there to compete in this division. And I think the fact that, like, how we were just talking about, like in the past, they would just have like one Eastern swing, play each team once, and then leave.
Yeah.
I think this time around it'll be different, because before, like, a lot of players have family and stuff on the East Coast. Those games were like trip for them to go and see their family, as opposed to like focusing just on hockey. And I think sometimes their play showed that. So I'm hoping this time around, like with everyone focusing just on hockey, that you won't have that distraction. So like I don't think their past experience or past history with these teams will play a lot of prediction in terms of how they'll do this time around.
True. You make a good point. And to be honest, I still feel a lot of our teams will be against, say, Calgary, Winnipeg, and Edmonton, right?
Yeah.
I know they will. I think Winnipeg has taken a step back, and we will do some damage there. I think Calgary has gone better just on paper, and Edmonton, I think they have gone better a little bit, but Edmonton is just, has such dynamic firepower up front. I'm not sure if the Canucks have gone better, but the thing is, if I look at those mini series as you're talking about regarding the back-to-back in the East, we know that Toronto's never won a series in a long time. So I think we'll do fine there, and especially against Montreal and Ottawa. I know Ottawa is at the bottom of the list, but I'm not really sure how Montreal is above us in some of those analytic rankings. But that being said, as we look at our team moving forward, holy man, like some of these departures, I don't even know if it's addition by subtraction at this point, but we lost some pretty key players. And for some reason, they all just kind of, dished the jersey, and they're wearing different variations of red. But we'll start with Tanev. He's going to Calgary. He just signed a 4-year, 4.5 AAV, modified no trade clause, right? He got the money he wanted. He got the term he wanted. I know with the current cap issues with the Canucks, we just weren't able to afford that term.
Would you have done that contract though? Like, even if we had the money, would you have done that term and dollar amount?
Man, like, I know with a flat cap, it's hard to say, but if we did have it, it's a pretty decent contract. It's not a bad contract at all. I think the term might be a little high, only because analytically speaking and statistically speaking, Tanev has been regressing year by year. I know this was the first year he was healthy, but just looking at his injury history in the past, especially with a team like Calgary, they are so much more physical, and they're going to demand, the shot blocking, the way Tanev sacrifices his body. I think he's going to get injured a lot. I don't know. In a contract year, you kind of just ride out the injuries, but when you kind of have some security, you try to, let yourself get healthy a bit, right? How about you? Personally, I don't think I would have given him the 4 years, but 4.5 isn't a bad price for Tanev.
Yeah, no, like the dollar amount isn't bad, but for me, the biggest issue is the 4 years.
Yeah.
I think for him, at the most I would have done would have been 2 years.
Yeah.
I always am a bit weary giving out term and dollar amount to someone that has a career year on their last year of the contract. And that's kind of what he had, right? Like, he went through the season not really that injured and kind of put up numbers playing with Hughes. Mm-hmm. So, like, that was a contract that I would have never done. And I was glad that Benning passed on it. Because I was worried for a moment there that he was going to get desperate and give him whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
Just because of, like the fact that he lost so many players. So I'm glad he didn't do that. And yeah, Tanev was a great player to have, especially in the locker room. But I think there's enough young guys in our system that they'll be able to replace his points. Because like honestly, anyone can play with Hughes, right? And put up points. Like, he made Luke Shen look amazing, right? When he was playing with them. So anyone can play with Hughes that's primarily because of how well Hughes is as a player. So Tanev, I don't think will be as big of a loss. But what do you think about Stetcher?
You know what? Here's the thing. I think Jim Benning, as much flack as he gets, and I know I do support him a little bit more than I should. And I do call him out a lot, though, too. I'm not going to lie. But he made a good point. We cannot come back with the exact same defense. You know, our defense, our transition game was severely lacking. And that's something that we noticed heavily when we were facing, I think it was, which series was Myers injured against? Was it Vegas?
It was against Vegas, yes.
Yeah, so against Vegas. And when he came back, our transition game immediately changed from the back end quite a bit. And outside of him and Hughes, our transition game actually isn't that great. That's one thing that Tanev, I'd say, like, losing him does suck. But the thing is, Tanev's transition game wasn't that great. His defensive game was great, but I really don't think his transition game and his ability to bring the puck up and the quick pace style that the NHL is kind of getting to, I don't think that really, I don't think he really brought that aspect to the game, which we really need right now. And that was really evident against the Vegas game. Every neutral zone play, they would just get the puck, batting pucks out of air, and we couldn't even make a pass, and they'd be back in our zone, right? Their counter attack was amazing. So back to your question, sorry, about Stetcher. You know what? Stetcher is one of those things. He's a fan favorite, a Richmond local boy. Everyone loved him. He has great, connections to the Vancouver area, especially to the fans. Like his dog has his own, Instagram account, and like a lot of people love him and his personality and just what he brought to the team. He kind of was like a mini Linden. I mean, not skill wise, not fame wise, but like he kind of had that personality where I'm a local guy. I'm going to bring it, I'm going to bring it every night. I'm going to work hard for this team and connect with the fans heavily, right?
Yeah.
But to be honest, losing Stetcher, first of all, we couldn't afford him, due to our cap issues and some of the bad contracts that we have and the flat cap. We just couldn't afford him, especially with his qualifying offer. Would have been 2 million plus, 3 million plus. For that price, you can get someone else, right?
Yeah.
And as you said before, like just a little while ago, our up-and-coming our defensemen, our younger guys, they could potentially take over Stetcher's spot. Stetcher, like points-wise, he was decent for a 6-7 guy or a 5-6 guy. He didn't do too bad. But the thing is, replacing him actually isn't too hard, especially for the money, unfortunately. And that's my honest opinion. It sucked to see him go. I love Stetcher. I love what he brings to the team. He is such a solid bottom-pairing defenseman, works his butt off. But the thing is, you got people like Ulevy, you got people like Chatfield, you got other younger defensemen that can make that step and take those minutes. And, it is what it is. He got a great contract in Detroit, but I just don't know. I'm not as upset about this one as many other people are. I think he is replaceable, unfortunately. How about you?
This one for me hurt.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he signed just a 2-year, $3.4 million deal, was basically a $1.7 million per year.
Yeah.
Like that's dirt cheap for what he brings to the game, and he's like a known commodity. So like I agree, like we do have a lot of young players in the system that can come up, but like you said, maybe, right? Like it's a big question mark if they can take those minutes and play those big games with Troy. Like we knew what he brought, like the fact that we couldn't sign him to a $1.7 million deal, that's basically $700,000 more than a minimum contract.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's nothing. So the fact that we lost him to Detroit for nothing, that hurt, I think. And that was a signing that I wish we could have done.
Yeah.
I think his numbers were a lot better than what he's shown, and his game I think was a lot better. And when what was the name, Myers went out, he definitely, I wouldn't say that he took over because he didn't. I was looking for him to take over, similar to what he did against St. Louis, but I didn't think he was out of place or cost us goals or anything like that. Like I thought he was a very serviceable defenseman that was still growing, right? And we don't know where he will be in 2 to 3 years. So for me, that was a contract that I wish we could have made work somehow.
You make a really good point. Losing Stetcher hurt the most when Detroit signed Stetcher for the price that they did. It's such a cheap contract. I was so I don't get why the Canucks weren't able to match that offer or sign him for that. I know we are over the cap right now, but the thing is, with our LTIR and a few other things, I think we could have made it work.
The thing that was most frustrating though was the fact that when like you hear Troy talk in the media, he was basically like, Benning didn't even give me an offer or just kind of talk numbers. Like the fact that Benning, and I understand that his hand was strapped, but the fact that you don't even like talk to the player and just see what they're asking for, because I agree, like the qualifying offer of a 2.1, that was too much. But like you can't convince me the fact that he signed 1.7 with Detroit that he wouldn't have signed for maybe 1.5, 1.6 to stay in Vancouver.
True.
Like the guy is still skating with a bunch of Canucks in his Canucks gear. Like he wanted to stay, he didn't want to go, right? And like that part was frustrating. The fact that he, like, Benning didn't even like have a dialogue with him, and he basically called him last minute and was like, hey, can you like wait 5 more hours? He was like, no, like I'm not gonna wait, like, and that's why he like took this deal with Detroit.
And you know what, and as a UFA, like, with zero security, and as a bottom pairing defenseman, if you get that offer, you take it, right?
Of course.
So, but the thing is this, man, like, you bring up a really good point. That is really frustrating as a fan to hear that the general manager didn't even reach out to a fan favorite and just connect, right? But the thing is this, does it not give you the inkling that Benning was ready to just move on from Stetch and just give someone else a chance?
Yeah, and like maybe that is the case, but like,
because that's just business, right? Like, and it sucks to say it, but that's just how they gotta be sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I know that he did that with a few of the players. Like, you know what, like, we just can't afford you and stuff. But like, the thing that is confusing is like, why would he then circle back and be like, okay, just wait like a few hours? Like, because I think Benning at the time was working out the Schmidt deal or something like that.
Oh, it was the Arizona thing.
Yeah, sorry, the OEL deal.
Yeah. Oh man.
So he was just like, wait a few hours. So like, if you wanted to move on, great, move on, right? But there was a lot of mixed messages, and so it seemed like Benning still wanted him. And if that's the case, like it sucks that we lost him out for basically pennies on the dollar.
Agreed. And the fact that first of all, I'm happy he didn't go to the same division, right? But just the fact that you do lose him for that amount, and you lose a heart and soul guy that you can tell was loved in the locker room, that's gonna hurt a lot, And he was a young guy. He connected with a lot of the young core, up and coming core, so that will definitely have its ramifications also. But I mean, you know what? Like, to be honest, as much as it sucks to see him go, I do think he is more replaceable than Tanev, right? And it's.
I agree with that point.
It stings, but looking at the bigger picture, I don't think it was that bad of a loss as other ones that we experienced, right? Sorry, moving forward, the biggest loss I think we had was Markey. So what are your kind of thoughts on what happened there?
Yeah, that one was a tough one just because of like he was our rock. Like we definitely didn't play the best in front of him, but he saved us so many times, and he was just amazing for us. He was our MVP. But on the flip side, though, the contract that he signed for, like, I completely understand it from his perspective.
Yeah,
get your money.
Yeah,
you only play the sport for like a certain number of years, so get as much money as you can.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad Canucks didn't even come close to that dollar or the term, because 6 years at $36 million, $6 million cap space. He basically has I think he has a no movement clause, but a great player, and definitely he'll be a loss. But there's no way that we could have signed him for that term or money.
Yeah, and do $6 million. He, like, his contract is until 2026, and he's got a no movement clause. I think it's a full no movement clause.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
And man, like, 6 million AV. Like, no offense, as great as he did, I'm remembering some games, like the last game we faced against the Blues, and how terrible he played. Like, sometimes he would let in goals that were just like ridiculously bad, and some days he would just be stoning people. But like you said before, without Ian Clark, is he a $6 million goalie? That's the biggest question I'm wondering about right now. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Ian Clark definitely doesn't get enough credit in this market for the work that he does. How will Markstrom be? without him, I don't know. I'm very curious to see how he does, but I do agree. I think it is a loss just because he was a known commodity. He was our MVP, and to lose him to a divisional rival, especially, I think sucks. Especially if he's able to keep up his play. Yeah.
No, and the fact that he went to Calgary stinks. That sucks so bad. But that being said, I mean, I know we did get Holtby, but obviously, Demko's supposed to be our guy. I don't think Demko's sample size was large enough. He stoned Vegas for like, what, 3 games?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a large enough sample size to just be like, all right, kid, come on, you're a starter now.
Yeah, but like, okay, I'm going to put you in Benning's shoes. And, like, if you sign Markstrom, let's just say you just took too many shots and you just end up matching his contract with Calgary. So he signed. Like, what do you do then? Because then you basically have Markstrom signed for 6 years, and you also have a young prospect with Demko, with the Seattle expansion looming. You're stuck with 2 goalies, and all the teams know that you have to flip one of them, right? Because otherwise you'll end up losing one to Seattle. Like, what would you do then if you had signed Markstrom?
Yeah, no, you make a really good point. And considering Seattle's coming in literally next season, I think that's And to be honest, the thing is this though, I know a lot of fans are talking about how, like, could you have been able to sign Markey for short-term contract and then trade him?
Did you just call him Mungie?
Yeah, call him Monkey. Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyways. So Markey, you do like a sign and trade, right? But the thing is, Benny just, first of all, that's really hard to pull off, especially with the expansion coming up. The other thing is this though, you make a really good point. Like, how do you keep both goalies? To be honest, it is impossible. So I think we got Holtby for 2 years only for 4.3, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a very reasonable contract. It's a modified no movement, so we still have options to move him if we need to.
Or like leave him exposed for the draft. So
and Markey, there's just no way in hell we're gonna be 6x6 for him and get Demko starting time. You can't be paying a backup goalie $6 million. And Markey's age is going to be up there, right? So this really shows that Calgary, not only are they stealing all our players, but they really want to, go for it now. They're paying all these big contracts and these long-term contracts to go for it now, hoping that they can get pretty far in the playoffs. But I don't know, man. Like, Markey, like, it's stung losing Markey, but I'm hoping that Demko can step it up because I don't know about Holtby.
Yeah, so like before we get to the new players, including Holtby, just to kind of like put a bow on this topic, like, I think Markstrom is a great player, but given his demands for a long term, his money requests and like the no movement clause, especially with the Seattle expansion coming up, and the fact that you need to allocate money for the contracts of Pettersson and Hughes, there really was just no way that Canucks could have kept Markstrom, even if they traded Demko. Like, you're basically allocating another $6 by $36 million contract to basically like the long list of bad contracts that he's already signed. Absolutely. He just couldn't do it. So I'm glad that we moved on from him, and I think I do think we'll be fine without him, to be honest. But we'll get into that later on. So do you want to? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, and just kind of like, you bring up a really good point. Like, as you asked before, putting yourself in Jim Benny's shoes. Yeah, at a certain point, you just got to walk away. That money in that term doesn't make sense, especially for the Canucks. And Hughes, Pettersson are gonna demand big money. Besser's contract is expiring soon. I don't know if he's gonna get a pay raise, but he's gonna get a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. But we still got a few other players that just ditched, right? Another new Calgary Flame is Levo. Yeah. I know for him, like, he was injured most of the year, man. He sat on the bench. He watched from the stands, but he did bring a lot of balance, especially to Horvat's line when he did play, right? And in the bottom six, he's reliable. He was insurance, and he had some pretty decent goals here and there. What are your kind of thoughts of losing him for pretty much, like you said, next to nothing?
Nothing. Yeah, it was like $875,000 contract. It was nothing. Yeah. That one was weird. Yeah. The fact that, because we showed interest, we offered him the same deal that he got from Calgary, but he took the Calgary deal. So I think that was one of those things that it was just like there was nothing that you could do. It seemed like he thought he had more opportunity to showcase his skills and potentially get a bigger deal next season.
Yeah.
So I think that's why he chose Calgary, because we offered him the exact same contract.
Yeah.
And he went there. So like, it sucks to lose him for nothing, but when a player clearly doesn't want to come back, there's not much that you can do if you're the Vancouver Canucks. So it would have been great to sign him for a cheap deal, but he does have some question marks too. He's coming off a pretty bad injury where his knee basically blew out. And his recovery time was supposed to be like a month, but he ended up taking like 4 months. So
but he still wasn't healthy, wasn't he? Like,
yeah, no, he wasn't. But I mean, he did pass the physicals in order to sign the contract with Calgary. But I don't know what shape he'll be in and stuff. So yeah, it does suck to lose some depth, but I'm not losing sleep over that one.
Yeah, one person that I am losing sleep over is Toffoli. Another player.
Yeah, let's get into this one.
Yeah, like he dons a different red jersey. He's going to Montreal. Probably considered the Vegas of Canada, kind of. But man, like, how do we lose Toffoli? And he signed such a decent contract. I know we just didn't have the money. I get it, right? But the price that we paid for a player that really didn't even help us in the playoffs. He was injured for a long time. And for the 13 games he played, he put up points, but whatever. By that time, I feel like without him, the Canucks probably would have made the playoffs. And we, gave up a really good prospect and a second rounder. Like, this one pissed me off, dude.
Yeah, man. This one hurt a lot. So your first point, like the fact that he didn't help, I thought he helped during the season. Like, I do think without him, I don't think we would have made the playoffs, because I think without Benning going out and getting a top 6 player, I think it would have shown his lack of confidence in the team. Yeah. And I think that would have just kind of trickled down to everyone else. So I think the fact that Benning went out, was aggressive, got a top 6 player, I think it gave the team a boost. And he did play well. Like, I think he got like 10 points in 10 games before the season pause. So I thought he helped in the regular season. Playoffs, he was a non-factor. He came in one game, scored, got an assist, played well, but he was basically a non-factor in the bubble. But the thing that sucks is, like you said, it was a very reasonable contract, 4.25 for a bona fide top 6 player, one that we know fits into our system well, plays well with our players well. Like, he's a known commodity. We gave up a lot, 2nd round, I think a 3rd round, and Tyler Madden, who, we'll see what he ends up being, but still, a top-rated prospect. That sucks. Like, the fact that we gave up all that and didn't even re-sign the player. Yeah. But the thing that really pissed me off, and it's kind of the same thing with Troy Stretcher, is like Benning just gets so lost in like his own head. And I understand why he was so after the OEL trade. Was basically that was the only way that he was going to be able to unload some bad contracts.
True.
Right. So like I understand why he was going after that, but like Toffoli even said on the radio, was like Benning didn't even like come at us with like numbers or like ask us where we were at in terms of like what we wanted for a contract.
Yeah.
But like the fact that Benning, he doesn't seem like he's good at multitasking. Like he can only do one thing at a time, and like the fact that you didn't even know what his price was and let him go for such a cheap deal. And I understand like we didn't have money, but like if we didn't have money, like I think they offered Markstrom like $5 million or something like that. And so it's like, how do you have money for that? Like I remember Benning called Tanev with a contract the night before he signed with Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are you going to pay these players, but then you can't find some money for Toffoli? So that part, like, I was very pissed the first few days. My stance has changed slightly, and I think we'll get into it later on with like younger players that might be able to crack the team. So my stance has changed a little bit, but every time I see his face or he's like hear his name, like I'm like, man, like why didn't we just sign him? Like if we signed him, our top 6 would have been solid.
So good. And now, like I know we'll get into it a little bit later, but our top 6 is a huge question mark. Toffoli and Pearson, the brotherhood again. It was such a feel-good story, and then Horvat finally had someone on his wing that he could really rely on. And it was just like you said, the whole Benning fiasco. Because apparently, what shook down was that there was an offer and kind of a bit of an agreement on place, and things were kind of trending in the right direction. And then as soon as the OEL situation came up, everything just disappeared. And then everyone was put on the back burner. And like you said, it was just like just focusing on one thing, nothing else, tunnel vision. And I understand that Benny wanted to get rid of all these contracts, but no offense, man, like you have some GMs that have kind of the freedom to go over the cap and then work their way back, right? With certain trades and certain buyouts and this and that. But you could tell that Benny, he just was not allowed to go over that number because I guess the trust may not be there with ownership, right? Of him being able to come back down. I'm kind of happy that we didn't get OEL. I mean,
I agree with that. Yeah.
Because the term and the money was insane. Like he's supposed to be the staple captain or the staple guy for Arizona long term, right?
Yeah.
And the player that all the fans can love. He's pretty much their Linden. But for us, like if we took that on, you know what? He's aging. Like he would have been pretty decent. But just with the whole money factor and age factor, he's making a lot of money. And
the only way that we could have done that trade is if we sent Eriksson the other way.
Yeah. And Louis Eriksson still has 2 more years, right? And I thought that this year we could be able to trade Louis because I know his cap hit's like 6. His real money is only like 2-3 million for both years combined, I think. And I really thought that maybe a cap floor team would want to pull something out, but they're gonna want a first, they're gonna want a second, and Benny already did that, and he's not gonna want to do it again because fans were so upset, right, with losing the pick. So
Eriksson, I did think that there was a slight glimmer of hope that we'd be able to flip him, but like you said, like when the market was set with Toronto, when they had to ship out a first round with Marlowe's contract, I think that was the bar that a lot of the cap floor teams wanted, and I don't think 100%. That was a non-starter for Benning. And like honestly, like I'm okay with it. Like there's only 2 years left. Like it would have been great to get under that contract, but like to give up like a big asset like a first rounder, I don't think made a lot of sense.
Dude, in 2022, I have so many big plans. Like, I'm getting married that year too. But the thing that I'm most excited about is, Louis Eriksson no longer being on the team. So I don't know. We'll see how things gonna shake out. To be honest, there is still time. There's some time before the season starts. So if a cap floor team is struggling to make ends meet,
like, have you seen Cap Geek or Cap Friendly, whatever the site is now? But there's honestly not that many cap floor teams anymore. I think Detroit's the only one that's left that's like at the bottom of the cap.
Yeah.
I was like surprised by that because I thought like Ottawa, Florida, but they're all like in the middle or like they're all in the like middle. Like they don't need to get to the cap floor anymore.
What's the cap floor this year? Do you know? 60.2.
So yeah, something like that.
So yeah, you have New Jersey. They're already at 64. Yeah. So I mean, to be honest, like, no one's taking.
There was no one that needs to get to the cap floor. There's teams that have a lot of cap space, like Detroit, but there's not that many teams that have that much cap space. So I was shocked by that. So I think Eriksson is stuck with. I think we're stuck with Eriksson for 2 more years.
I think so too. And I mean,
I was hoping that Benny was just gonna tell him that we're gonna send you to the minors and then just like force him to retire, but
that could still happen though.
I'd be pissed if that happens now after we lose to Foley because we have no money, and then Eriksson at the start of the season decides to retire.
Yeah, that would be.
I'd be pissed.
That reminds me of the whole Luongo fiasco.
Yeah, I know.
Well, that wraps up part 1. In part 2, we'll be discussing players that came into the lineup and kids that might have a chance of cracking the lineup. Also, a little bit about the helmet fiasco.